r/2x chromosomes. Eat_the_damn_Brito says. Should I break up with my BF because he doesn't support feminism? Me 19 female and my boyfriend 20 male have been dating for 9 months and it's my first relationship, thus I'm a bit unexperienced when it comes to this topic. So just like the title says, with ideological differences. He recognizes that violence against women and gender inequality exists, however he's against the movement because it generates hatred against men. I told him that the male actions are the ones to blame for this hatred, but he doesn't agree with me. The problem is that other than this, he's great. He's always supporting me when I'm anxious or sad. He loves me. We never fight and he's by my side when I feel alone. I also can't really say that he's alienated. He does psychology, and because of that he has to read feminist texts and books. In addition to that, he has done a presentation on feminism yesterday, and the teacher really liked it. According to him, he said what the teacher wanted to hear. We decided to give some time. His opinion is that we should still be together, and that we can overcome our ideological differences. But I don't know what to think. Thank you for reading, and I'm sorry for my bad English. Flowers 2000 says. Maybe I'm just older now, but ideological differences do matter as you mature as an individual, and in a relationship, as the honeymoon period of your relationship fades your values and beliefs aligning does become more important. At the end of the day, if my partner started to question the importance of feminism as a movement that brings empowerment to my life and my daughter's life, I would be super disappointed and genuinely see them as someone who doesn't truly value me. By incorrectly claiming that feminism is about hating men, he is making it about himself and his world rather than yours, something for you to consider. That says a lot about him as a person. Another question is, if you choose to pursue a relationship with someone who condescendingly and incorrectly frames feminism now, how do you expect to practically manage life together as a couple in a world where ingrained gender roles do have an impact on long-term couples? For example, how do you negotiate conversations about the mental load with someone like that? How will dating a man who disregards feminism practically impact you as a woman? You'll be banging your head against a wall repeatedly. Just considerations. Rouge_x3 says. Op and her boyfriend might also just be a little stuck on semantics. I find a lot of people who don't agree with feminism are more so just about fourth wave feminism, but either don't know about the concept of it or simply forget to be specific. And if you're around the wrong kinds of people or in the wrong bubble, it very much comes across as women, POC and queer people can do no wrong, while everything wrong with the world is a fault of white cis men. Especially when Op says her BF does see the issues and inequalities that do exist, but seems more so to disagree with current methods of going about it. It makes me think he might just disagree with fourth wave terminally online feminism. Mountain Most 8186 says. Also the guy's 20. I said and believed some cringy stuff when I was 20 that is pretty against my current values and beliefs. Maybe he'll be open and expand his mind. But sitting around and waiting for someone to change is a dangerous game. Kitchen_victory_7964 says. We never fight. According to him, he said what the teacher wanted to hear. So does he tell you what you want to hear so he can get what he wants from you? LSD_4Doin says. Thank you for this comment. We never fight. OFC you never fight. Opus. You're 9 months in, at ages 19 and 20. What's there to fight about at that age? When the honeymoon phase ends, your ideologies will be a big part of how, and if, you come together to solve problems. Lissa 545 says. Yep, and I'm concerned no one else is really digging into his selfishness. What if she gets pregnant? Will he allow her to make her own choices, or make it all about himself? Ideological differences literally control life and death these days. /super. Frick. Ed up to say, but it's true. She could die during pregnancy if she doesn't have care, or if she does a back alley abortion. Hope she lives in good parts of Europe. Uniquusaname 40 says. Disclaimer, I'm male. From Google, feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. After explaining that to someone, them answering that they aren't a feminist should be seen the same as answering that they are a racist or are a homophobe. I think the fact that we actively label people feminists rather than label people who aren't feminists the way we label racists or homophobes implies feminism is not the default, expected position, which is unhelpful. Scatterboarding Giraffe says. Just wanted to chime in as a man as well. Feminism definitely does not generate hatred towards men, and I've never felt that it does. It's concerning when I hear other guys say that, because they're either lying about what feminism is, or they just don't care enough to understand what women experience. I'd be worried about how he treats other women and girls, especially if he were to have daughters someday. Teaching them that feminism is about hating men, and that they shouldn't advocate for themselves is dangerous. Rianne1 Mated says. Or he is one of those guys who is giving women a reason to hate him. Sakurfawn Warabut says. Feminism doesn't breed hate towards men, misandry does. The fact that he doesn't know the difference tells me that he doesn't actually have a clue what he's talking about. But to answer your question, why would you want to keep dating somebody who blatantly disrespects a key part of your identity? I'm willing to bet that his idea of overcoming your differences is by you giving up your views to support his. Butamian says. He doesn't support the movement because entirely false reason. He is the one with an ideology, and while he is young and could outgrow it, it seems unlikely given how he's speaking out about it ignorantly and getting positive support. Ask him about specific anti-woman policies and figure out whether he's actively voting to take rights away from you while claiming to love you. Scully says. Misandry does not breed hatred towards men, it simply is hatred of men. Hatred brought about by the mass abuse, rape, and forced servitude of women by men since the dawn of humanity. As Op said, it's the poor behavior of men that generates hatred for them, not the other way around. Sergka says. We can overcome our ideological differences means you will do as I say, or else. You may not believe it now, but in time you will. Leek says. This guy is telling you he lies about his beliefs and politics to get what he wants out of women. He's not interested in overcoming the differences. He's just using this time to determine how much he has to lie to you to placate you, just like the teacher. Just like the teacher, he will be proud of himself for handling you. Fundamentally, this isn't about ideological differences. This is about the risks of someone who is willing to tell someone what they want to hear, but not to actually listen to them, or disagree as an equal, and deal with the consequences of that disagreement. Disguised Skinwalker says. This almost happened to me, but I got out on time. The difference was my ex was in his early 30s when he started pestering me on a daily freaking basis with not only with his extreme beliefs, superior race, far-right American politics, anti-LGBT, just in general he would sponge up whatever his friends were shouting, but with the feminism bad because they hate men. And men suffer in silence means it, whereas all the time I was supporting him and telling him that it's okay to open up and not hold negativity buried. But no, somehow the problem was that he wasn't allowed to have emotions and feelings because some feminists said so on the internet. Somehow what he read online, or what others didn't even say directly to him, was bad for his position in a society as a man. So in the end, my support, encouragement, and when I was literally there for him during his hardships, that all fell on deaf ears and everyone else was to blame. This was but one of many reasons he's my ex now. r/2XChromosomes. Lunefery says. Am I being unreasonable? So my sister-in-law just had a baby in my mill. Her stepmom completely ruined her birthing experience. Wouldn't respect her boundaries at all during labor. Invited everyone to the hospital. Had bottle of wine with her. So I saw the new baby today, and I was telling Mill that I didn't want anyone at the hospital except for her, my mom, and husband. However, I also want 2 weeks after baby is born with just us, mothers included. I just want that special time with my new baby. I didn't think 14 days was a big deal. Everyone has already waited 9 months. Well, Mill totally freaked out and was like, if my family can't see the baby, I'm not either. Am I the asshole for wanting this request? Jeek Peeps says, I'd exclude her. She'll change her mind when she realizes that her grandchild needs her to be a grown-up. If she never realizes, that won't really be any loss. While isn't 2270 says, nope. You are not wrong. Your baby, your choice. You do you and everyone else can suck it if they don't like it. Keep up with setting those healthy boundaries and your life will be so much better for it. Grand Lizardo says, no, and stick to your guns. What she did to Sil was an inexcusable flaunt of power and aggression, and there will hopefully be consequences when Sil is up to holding her own. I had husband with me, mother long deceased, and Mill blessedly far away, and it was still crowded. And make sure you give your wishes in writing to the hospital staff. Most of them are fed up with these birthing parties, and you are the undisputed queen of this scene. Axis Subreddit says, no. Having a baby will be one of the most physically and emotionally vulnerable experiences of your entire life, and you are entitled to do whatever you feel is best to feel secure and safe. Your husband can have more of an opinion, since he's your life partner / next of kin, and would be the baby's father, but even his primary role is to ensure that you are okay, and that your needs and baby's needs are seen to. He'd better damn well have your back, other people's feelings be damned. Accomplished Dad 5951 says, I would uninvite her from the hospital and let her know she can meet the baby after the 2 weeks. Oregon Chick says, NTA. It's totally reasonable to not want a huge group of spectators / visitors while you're going through a major medical procedure and dealing with probably one of the most emotional and overwhelming moments of your life. And it's also reasonable to expect a period of adjustment where you get to live in a quiet happy bubble with your newborn. So let your Mill boycott everything that just means more peace and quiet when you actually need it. Along those lines, I wouldn't necessarily be too eager to try to include her, even if she changes her mind. She completely boundary stomped your Sil and made her delivery worse than it needed to be. By not having your Mill around making everything about her and what she wants to do, you'll keep the focus on your own experience, as it should be, and you and your husband won't be pulled in multiple directions trying to appease her, when you should be focused on each other and your baby. Consider Mill's tantrum a huge gift, and be sure to let the labor and delivery team know that you have a very limited list of people who will be involved in this, so they can keep Mill and anyone else she tries to invite along away from you during this amazing moment. Wolfgang Adams says, after what she did to your Sil, I don't know why you would even tell her you were at the hospital until after you had the baby. And even then, maybe even wait until you're at home where you can lock the doors and only let her in if she shows up alone. This woman has serious issues respecting people's boundaries. Maurice Curie says, you are not. The person who gives birth and carries the pregnancy gets to make the rules during the postpartum period. Full stop. Don't let anyone talk to you about compromise. You will be undergoing a major medical event and both you and baby are in a fragile state after birth. I allowed my absolutely wonderful Mill visit about 4 hours after our son's birth. It was more stressful than I anticipated, even though I adore her with my whole heart. I have communicated to my husband that I want absolutely 0 visitors for at least 12 hours after this next birth. I want time with our new baby and for me to actually sleep. My husband is also not allowed to leave the hospital without another family member tapping in to sit with me. Something absolutely traumatic and horrific, but also medically necessary and life-saving, happened when he quickly ran home to check on our cat 18 hours after birth. He was gone for 30 to 45 minutes and I went from okay to almost bleeding out while surrounded by unfamiliar medical professionals. Also, our eldest will be the first visitor no matter what. Big brother gets to meet baby brother before or at the same time as any grandparents. We have about 20 weeks to go and he is talking to baby brother every day and trying to show him toys. He started sticking his stomach out and patting it, pretending he also has a baby in there because toddlers are great imitators. 2-Bit Cabrix says, I'm confused, whose baby is it? You say your sister-in-law had a baby and then later refer to it as my new baby. If you had the baby then yes, you're absolutely allowed to set the rules. If not, then you need to leave that to the sister/mother. Edit, I see it now. Yeah, NTA, your baby your rules. Chilean Joel says, the best thing about having a baby during COVID was by far the fact that no visitors were allowed, except the fathers, obviously. It wasn't 2 weeks, but we had at least 3 days to ourselves, and it was bliss. Your mill will have to deal with it whatever it is you decide. Blue and Fuzzy says, your birth, your rules. My first was born during COVID, so we weren't allowed visitors at the hospital and I will not be allowing visitors when my second is born. You are the person whose body will be experiencing the trauma of birth. You will be feeding and caring for a newborn. Nobody is entitled to access to your baby. Strange Difference 94 says, I'm surprised you invited her in the first place. r/2XChromosomes. Lal Nidler says, how to respond to this? I 23 female, was walking in a mall by myself, pretty fast too. I just wanted to get my stuff and go home, and this man passed by me saying excuse me, and I turned back, because I thought he might be looking for a certain store or something. He just said I know this is random, but I think you're cute. I was thrown so off guard I just said thanks. And turned and kept walking, but I got so scared and anxious from it. He was walking in the opposite direction as me, but after this interaction I kept looking back and now he was going the same direction as me, keeping a distance. I'm pretty sure I lost him when I got inside Target, but I was shaking and scared that he would follow me to my car somehow. What is the best response in this situation? I've been fortunate so far to not have to deal with things like this, so this really left me shaken. What do I do/say in response? I also felt kind of bad at first because he wasn't being rude or aggressive or anything, but I know I don't owe anything to these people. Oregonchik says, if he changed directions to follow you, you definitely had reason to feel anxious. Don't be afraid to head to the customer service area of Target or whatever store you're near and let them know that a stranger seems to be following you. They can call security to intervene with the guy or just walk you to your car safely. As for how to respond to comments like that, you can respond in whatever way feels best or safest to you. I'd probably say, this is making me uncomfortable. Please leave me alone. And I'd repeat it loudly if he didn't go away as requested. But that's just me, do what works for you. Anticrepuscular_A says, you can say nothing and keep going, or say I don't appreciate those kind of comments. Just say whatever is true, or nothing at all. Shotgun_wedding cake says, generally, I don't acknowledge it. In the same way, I don't when a random tells me I should smile or any of those passive aggressive things. Nullpo19 says, generally speaking, go with your gut on these things. It's completely likely that it was a benign comment, but there's always the chance that it wasn't. If it doesn't feel right, don't risk it. Let the person know in no uncertain terms that you aren't interested and then leave. Stuck to public areas if the person doesn't continue doing whatever they were going when you came along. Out of the ordinary doesn't always mean bad. But you are responsible for your own safety and you should follow your instincts. Midwich23 says, what rock was he hiding under during Me Too? Street harassment is not cool. Macaperi says, this happens to me a lot. I either say thank you and keep walking, or I say okay, have a nice day and keep walking. Depends on the situation and how safe I feel. Express Object 955 says, there's a lyric of a song I really like that goes, the ghetto boys are catcalling me as I pull my keys from my pocket. I wonder if this method of courtship has ever been effective. Has any girl in history said, sure, you seem so nice, let's get it on? The reason why this is so uncomfortable is because the complimenting / catcalling is just attention seeking behavior. It's not really about you, the individual they're complimenting. It's the power of how you are clearly in the middle of living your life, and rather than meeting you at your level and communicating the way you need to be communicated with, it's like the guy's pretty much saying out of the blue, you are sexually appeasing to me, balls in your court, do something about that. It's selfish and demanding. That's not what we look for in potential partners. So your guts are right, we just feel feelings first before things make sense. Normally when people are interested in other people, we wait for timing and usually follow up with, can I buy you a coffee? This guy didn't. Maybe he genuinely just wanted to make you smile, but I doubt that. It's like he just wanted to dump emotional baggage on you because he wanted something he doesn't know how to get. He probably didn't realize he was being creepy. Next time, it's okay to tell someone, you're making me uncomfortable. Trying Toba Cheeky says, you either say nothing and ignore, or you say thank you. In either case nothing happened. I'm going to get downvoted, but you may need to talk to a therapist / get off the internet if your anxiety is so powerful that an innocent compliment makes you so scared. He didn't say anything vulgar, he didn't touch you. He said a compliment. That is it. Unless there is context missing like tone, him speed walking, aggressive gestures or whatnot, then this was probably no big deal. Talernittle says, carry pepper spray and don't be afraid to use it, especially in a parking lot. r/2XChromosomes. Actual Lisa, she says, just venting about 50 plus male toddlers in the workplace. I worked for a year and a half as a doc writer for an engineering group and had to change positions because taking care of several grown men was becoming very taxing to my mental health. I had no engineering experience when I started and had to learn the field on the fly, which they knew and I was comfortable with because I've always been a quick learner. These are all engineers who had 20-30 years experience in the industry, who had to constantly be told that they needed to document their work, check equipment specs to ensure they had the right tools, be told when calibrated instruments were calibrated improperly, etc. etc. By someone who was literally learning as they went. Cut to today, 6 months later, and I'm still helping these children. I found out today that one of them had purchased about 12 pieces of equipment since I left without using the correct process, and now one of the instruments in my new department is going to be out of its calibration interval and we have no way to calibrate it or even buy a new one. I asked him to help me get the proper documentation started. I tackle half, he tackles half, and while I got my half completed he spent several hours asking me questions that are literally written step by step in a procedure that I gave him on a sticky note and that I followed without issue. This is just one example from today, but these men expected me to come up everything for them for equipment that they have used for decades. It's exhausting and I had a little mentee bee on my drive home today because the weaponized incompetence is really getting to me. They are like kids. They just pretend to not know how to do their jobs because if they stall long enough I'd do it for. Dvoran says, that's so frick edition. And I'm guessing it's also because management is fine with this too. Dare I guess the demographics of management? Actual Lissa, she says. Men in their 50s, I reported straight to the head engineer, who was one of the worst offenders. Vaughan says. Quell surprise, oh I'm sorry. It sucks you need to deal with this. Slash. The underscore pen 15 club says. Hey, I wanted to take a second to talk to you about your health. I'm really concerned that you were unable to follow instructions that were clearly written down for you. Have you considered scheduling a doctor's appointment to make sure there is nothing larger at play here? Zazaspas says. I'm a woman in my 50s. Ima stay single. Macathathing says. OMG Menti B is now the only way my brain is gonna think about it. Thank you. Totaligeral 666 says. How do you suppose they are getting paid so much? Waxing through world says. Lol, my family has a few engineers. It's jarring how much public point safety is dependent on these guys stamping designs. Ethan 55 says. Menti B, I work with man children in Tech 2 Solidarity. Riddler Dioff Castamere says. They report to other people who are just like them. So they literally have never been called into account. It's just an old idiot boys club. Been there, still doing that. Just like my workplace. Think they deserve a medal every day just because they've been around for a long time. Midmost Float 90 says. It sounds like you've been dealing with quite a frustrating situation. It's challenging when colleagues rely heavily on you and seem resistant to taking ownership of their responsibilities. The weaponized incompetence is a vivid way to describe it. It's important to set boundaries and communicate expectations clearly, even if it means pushing back on their attempts to delegate tasks to you. Prioritizing self-care is crucial in such work environments. Hang in there and keep advocating for yourself. Chigerald 26 says. Female director in engineering here with 20 years of experience. I love being mansplained every week by new hires / new engineers. Friends for Life says. Yehan, engineers are the worst, they all have mother issues. Garden Wineguru says. I work in it, and it is typically common that engineers of all genders hate writing documentation. They all have too much on their plates, so none of them want to look back instead of forward. But it does need to get done at some point. Mladenik says. I never heard of EAS doing documentation for calibration. EAS do circuit, system, and chip design. The documentation engineers do is for design and fabrication and assembly of the boards and systems so they can be reproduced in manufacturing. And also writing the verification tests for the circuits, boards, and systems they design. Calibration documentation take no skill at all and is a waste of money to have an engineer be involved with that. It usually don't buy non-degrees secretaries and the like. r/2XChromosomes. Little underscore wanderer underscore says. He demanded an apology and I gave it to him. Backstory, my neighbor P, M24, and I, F34, along with my BFF were hanging out on the porch, catching up one night. The topic of relationships was brought up. P told us that he saw an attractive woman earlier and decided to shoot his shot. His opening line was, "Hey, you got a boyfriend?" Her response was, "I'm old enough to be your mother." My response was an automatic recoil and oof, don't do that. I explained to him that pickup line just has an undertone of misogyny and there are better ways to go about it. He then told me that he stopped listening after I said oof, don't do that. I could tell that that statement bothered him slightly, but I wasn't sure why. The night went on and he hung out as usual. We've hung out a few times after that and it was never brought up, so I never thought about it much. Current, so since P was new in town and he misses his family and couldn't make the trip to go visit them. I invited him over to share my Thanksgiving leftovers. My family does Thanksgiving lunch, and they are an awkward bunch, so I never really invite friends over for the holiday, and we could enjoy each other's company. Conversation over cocktails, leftovers, and chess, a game we both enjoy thoroughly. A few hours in, and a couple cocktails later, he told me he wanted to get something off his chest. He brought up that night, and what I said, basically told me I was rude for saying that, and that it hurt his feelings, and looked me dead in the eyes, and insisted that I owed him an apology. I was taken aback. I didn't know what else to say, so I apologized. I told him I didn't mean any harm, and I didn't mean to hurt his feelings, and that I value our friendship. I said the words, and though I didn't want my friend to be hurt, I had this feeling in the back of my mind that I couldn't shake. I felt so small after saying it, and I couldn't understand why. I woke up today and thought about it some more. Why did I feel like I have to apologize? I truly believe I did nothing wrong. I had no ill intention. I did not curse him, call him names, or say something to purposefully hurt him. And yet he has the audacity to come into my home and demand an apology for the way he feels. Am I wrong for feeling this way? Should I say something, or should let this go? West Coast 19 says, he's upset because you hurt his fragile ego. He was rejected by that woman. Now he's making you pay the price for it. If you keep hanging out with this guy, I'd be on the lookout for him testing you on other stuff. Rinjefloa says, I agree, but you should definitely take your power back. Unapologize in a public place. Buy him a coffee, explain your side, and tell him he can come around again when he stops throwing a mantrum. Blurry Transparency says, Mantrum lol. Froggy Blue says, he then told me that he stopped listening after I said oof, don't do that. So if he stopped listening, how was he able to be offended? Launchammed says, yeah. He already told the story. And she replied, what a fragile ego. Jeez. Bethaniblerbird says, what in the Kentucky Fried audacity? So this guy came into your house, drank your alcohol, ate your food, and then had the audacity to demand you apologize for politely explaining to him why his behavior wasn't okay. That isn't shit a friend does, that's shit a whinny asshole does. Hey, X. Upon further reflection, I don't think this friendship is going to work out. After careful consideration, I realized I didn't actually say anything rude to you. You behaved in a manner that is unacceptable and were called out, and instead of accepting that and correcting the behavior, you cornered me in my home, where I had been kind enough to invite you, and demanded an apology. You made me feel very small that day, likely the same way you made that woman on the street feel that day. That is not something that friends do to each other, and I will be taking a step back from this friendship. I wish you nothing but the best, and sincerely hope you take what I've said into consideration and grow as a person from this. Please do not contact me further. If and when I'm ready to talk, I will contact you. Sincerely, Y. /script if you need something to go off of. How he responds to this is gonna tell you a lot. Meek says, before you do anything, I'd consider how much you value this friendship, and if the value you have placed on it, and well reflected in the actual reality of it. He was a casual ass to a random woman on the street, and it didn't work out for him. Not only were you not rude, you were correct. That was a bad approach, cringy and infective, especially if he wants to speak to women older than him. Then he admits he didn't listen to you any longer because he didn't like what you said, got drunk and demanded you validate him. That's not how a friend discusses being hurt by something you said. That's how a bully enforces their narrative and manipulates a situation emotionally to get maximum compliance. I'd be dropping it and distancing from him. He's told you he's not interested in actually have a dialogue with you between well-intentioned individuals. He thinks he can declare his feelings and then demand what he wants. Cone 10 says, the next time say, hey, I need to get something off my chest. About that evening, I think you were wrong in demanding an apology. It hurt my feelings, and you should apologize. Filthy_kid says, I'm getting Winnie baby vibes from this guy. You absolutely didn't have to apologize. Abhikavi says, well, now you know how he reacts to very gently being told he's done something wrong. That really says a lot about a person, doesn't it? How they handle constructive criticism is important. And his choice was to make you apologize for it. It's Sal Krebs says, this guy puts the man in manipulate. Innocent Lil Jural says, practice your non-apology apologies. I'm sorry you felt that way, but it wasn't my intent. Krazapatita 13 says, hey friend, I'm sorry you were put in this position. His feelings may have been hurt, and that is literally 0% your responsibility. To manage it is his, and it further shows his misogyny that he put that emotional labor on you. In calling him out you were being kind. One could have said much harsher things before he stopped listening. Rude and childish as all hell on his end, again. Further, it is by no means your responsibility to talk to, engage with, or spend any time with this person, regardless of your proximity. Blueville says, women are trained from infancy to be nice. To put everyone else's feelings first. To babies' parents say, don't spread your legs like that, you look like a slut. To toddlers, don't get your dress dirty, you have to look pretty for everyone else. It doesn't matter that you want to run or collect rocks. Don't hit that child that stole your toy. You need to share. Boys are allowed to hit and wrestle and be direct. You hug that relative, even if you don't feel like it. Give that guy a chance, he's so nice. It doesn't matter what your opinion is, it's about what he wants. We are trained to be nice to people always. To worry about them, their feelings. Even when they are being creepy, or misogynistic or rude. This guy asked for an apology, so you gave him one. He wasn't owed one. He could have taken the criticism and found a better pickup line. One that didn't imply he respects a man who owns a random woman more than the woman in front of him. But nope. He had to make you wrong cause he felt bad for his own actions. DLSS_87 says, are you still going to hang out with him? If so, why? r/2XChromosomes. Design Attention 1203 says, I cannot feel any sexual pleasure ever. Just a rant, going to try to keep it simply details here. I have slept with 3 different people, all who have tried various things for me, piff, eating out, fingering, clit stimulation. Nothing feels good. It either feels like absolutely nothing or it hurts/is overstimulating. I have tried masturbating, of course, fingering, direct and indirect clit stimulation, toys, dildo, vibes, and not even I can pleasure myself. I'm starting to think there's something physically wrong with me. I'm seeing someone currently, and he keeps asking what he can do for me during sex, and I just have to sit there like an idiot and say I don't know, because I literally do not. It feels like nothing will ever happen for me. I get very turned on, mentally and physically, Callie, so I don't think that's an issue. I've tried enhancing my experiences with alcohol and weed, make me more confident and more sensitive, but still nothing. Brilliant Chip 1751 says, see a sex therapist. They specialize in finding solutions to this exact situation. This used to be me. Now I orgasm like 20+ times each session. This isn't meant as a brag, but I hope it gives you hope. You deserve pleasure too. Resident_goat_crow says, now I orgasm like 20+ times each session. What? I've been sexually active for 20 years and can count on one hand how many times I have had 2 orgasms in one session. How did you go from 0 to 20? Honestly, I'm having a very difficult time believing you. Shotgun_wedding cake says, I can orgasm indefinitely. Well, I assume indefinitely. They just keep going with regularity. I haven't counted, but hours have gone past, and as long as there is stimulation, they keep coming. Ruveru says, sexual pleasure aside, how's life in general? Going mostly peachy otherwise, or a lot of stuff boiling over so to speak? The Lucky Frog says, hey, me too. I felt what I believe was normal pleasure with masturbation in my early mid-teens. Then in my late teens the pleasure from physical touching began to diminish and it never came back. Over time, I also lost the ability to arouse myself mentally. I tried literally everything: vibrators, other toys, internal stimulation, direct clit stimulation, stimulation with fingers, oral, humping/pressure stimulation, everything both by myself and with multiple partners. I tried watching porn, reading erotica, dirty talk, extended foreplay, nothing. Zip. Nada. Having my genitals touched feels like being touched on my arm. I've also combined multiple substances with solo and partnered stimulation, and that didn't change anything. It's not anxiety, because for a long time I didn't believe this was really gonna be a permanent problem. I figured I just hadn't found the right thing yet. But it's been 14 years now. The only thing I can think to possibly attribute it to is the Prozac my doctor put me on in my late teens, when he was misdiagnosing my Crohn's disease symptoms as anxiety. I took it for less than 2 years, but it coincided with the time when I was losing the ability to orgasm and, eventually, to feel anything. The medical community didn't used to say that loss of sexual pleasure from risk could be permanent, but now it seems they are saying that, and I don't have any better explanation. Trying Toba Cheeky says, please go see a gynecologist. Design Attention 1203 says, I'm 23, started having sex at 18, started masturbating, or trying to, at like 10. I'm just so frustrated and sad, I feel like I'm going to go my whole never getting to experience pleasure. GH0stcat13 says, I'm experiencing pretty much the same thing, and haven't found a solution yet, / you may want to check out r/sexual anhedonia. Shotgun_wedding cake says, Op, I feel for you, and I really hope that you can get a referral for a sex therapist. Talking to a doctor you feel comfortable with is a great idea. Thesentine Snail says, during masturbation, where's your head at while it's happening? Do you have fantasies? Visualize scenarios? For a lot of people, the touchy stuff is only half the equation. Less than that, TBH. I could flick the bean till the cows come home, but if I'm thinking about the fact that my bathroom needs cleaning, or that I need to pick up celery, absolutely nothing close to an orgasm is happening. r/2XChromosomes. Cat Apocalypse 333 says, am I being dramatic? So today I went to my uncle's business and there was only one employee there. I was looking for empty boxes they needed to get rid of, and he talked about my cross necklace. He reached over and touched my chest with the back of his hand, squeezing it before touching my cross that I put in the wrong way, and it was the wrong way up front. He complimented it, but since it was the wrong way it looked like an empty cross, and I had it for years, so I don't know why he was really suddenly noticing it. I feel like he just wanted to touch my chest, but I think that I'm just being dramatic. He never got so close to me when people were around, and he always kind of flirted with me, but he is my uncle's employee, so I don't think he would do it on purpose. Melonbalin says, you are not being dramatic. He didn't touch your chest on accident, that was 100% intentional. You don't accidentally grab a girl's chest while standing there talking. He was probably waiting for a time to have you alone to cop a feel. And it's sexual assault. I'm sorry he did that to you. Please tell your uncle and or the police if you're comfortable and in a place where they'd do something. And to the extent you can control it, don't be alone with him again. If he gets away with it this time, he will try more next time. Bravadle3 says. Repeat after me, no one is allowed to touch me. And if someone does touch you without your consent, it's never okay, and you are right that it's lewd. American_prophecy says. So. I don't think he would do it on purpose. He did it on purpose. Curiosity60 says. Tell your uncle. If there had been other people around, this man wouldn't have touched your jewelry, or you. He tried to camouflage his touching your chest with fixing your necklace. His intrusion was uninvited and unwelcome. He pushed your boundary. Show him he is not allowed to touch you without your explicit permission by asking your uncle to address the issue with his employee. Dunimi says. He did it on purpose because he's a creep. Tell your uncle what happened. And don't apologize when you do it. Don't make any excuses for him. If your uncle asked why you let him do it, tell him you were so shocked that you just couldn't move. And that now you're scared of this guy. Don't say that anything was your fault or you should have done anything different. Just the facts. Don't let anybody squirm their way into making this your fault for not stopping him. Xana K says. 100% intentional. You don't lay hands on somebody like that for such a reason. I'd be concerned about escalation. He's going to feel like he can get away with more since he was able to touch your breast without getting in trouble. Resident Librarian 40 says. The guy groped you. He deliberately did it in a way to cause doubt, precisely because creepy misogynists like him love to accuse women of imagining things and being too sensitive and or not having a sense of humor when they do or say something shitty. Tell your uncle and don't be anywhere near that creep again, unless you're with someone you can trust to be an ally, will stop and or call out any ill behavior. Preaching to Pervert says. This was completely intentional on his part. It's normal to freeze in situations like this. I did it a lot when I was young. Now that you know this is a thing, the next time you may be able to unfreeze and tell him to frick off. Thehomedatus says. You aren't and couldn't be dramatic in this situation because his behavior was dramatically inappropriate. This was sexual assault. You are allowed to be angry. Anger would be a valid response. I've seen men get deservedly slapped across the face for shit like this. Ask yourself, if there were no consequences to actually feeling pissed off at this dude, how much ambiguity would you be feeling right now? It's not as if you wanted to be touched, right? It's not as if you invited him to, right? It's not like just reaching out and touching someone without their permission is acceptable, right? Accept that your feelings are valid and focus on how you want to approach this. What is the conclusion/resolution that would bring you the most peace of mind? Do you see yourself being comfortable ever going to help out with your uncle's business again if this man was still working there? Is there a combination of words, actions, and reassurances that could be given for you to feel safe in his presence again? Do you feel safe enough to confront him yourself? If not, would you trust your uncle to handle it? I'm sorry this happened to you, Opus. Rainbows for All says. Would he reach out and fix the necklace of a guy? I don't think so. Daladaluch says. I don't think you're being dramatic. There's not really any reason for him to touch you like that. Not 100% following the touching with the back of his hand and squeezing part, but it sounds like it was all part of him turning the cross around, which there's no reason for him to be doing. If it's actually backwards, it's not like it's something that's going to be difficult for you to fix yourself. All he has to do is tell you, and you can fix it. There's also absolutely no chance that he's unaware of how close his hand is to a woman's chest, or that he doesn't know any better than to be grabbing at her for no good reason. Outrageous Field 5353 says, what do you think men care more about? Religious jewelry or touching women's breasts? Statistically speaking? Yup. There's your answer. Regina Phalange 123 says, I'd be like, why are you touching my chest, creep? Women, stop being nice. Start making these men feel as uncomfortable as they make us feel. Poot Poot 1021 says, I pretty much exclusively hang out with women and I rarely accidentally touch someone's chest. It was on purpose and I think your uncle would want to know what type of person is working for him. Corvidural says, nope. That was assault. Report it. Danivel says, honey, my husband and sons do not fix my necklace for real without asking first. This guy is a complete stranger who flunked kindy. He should not have touched you at all. Tell your uncle, and if he doesn't give this guy, at the minimum, a very stern talking to, well. This says something about your uncle. Hello_hangmail says, WTF, don't people learn stuff like, don't touch strangers in kindergarten? r/2XChromosomes. Distorted Laughter says, thoughts on dating men who adamantly consider themselves feminists. BTW, I'm talking about men who literally make it their personality about how much they want you to know that they barely care about reproductive rights/feminism. Sharing a little context here, because the men I've met who are like this are literally just wolves in sheep's clothing. They want you to get comfortable around them, making it easier for them to manipulate you, because hey, I said I donate monthly to Planned Parenthood, but I'm not getting tested regularly. I took a women's history course in university, so I can't possibly be a misogynist. You're the one with the problem. It's just men who make it a point to tell you that they do a few progressive things or have read feminist literature, so they could never in a million years be accused of misogyny. When in reality they think this fade is slowly breaking the more you talk to them. I might also not be explaining this the best, but I know I'm not the only one who has met men like this, and I'm certainly not the last. Clarice Chang says, be really careful about loud/outspoken feminist men. Pickup artists teach each other all the feminist buzzwords and phrases that sound good. But talking isn't enough to make someone feminist. A man is feminist in his actions, not his word. So _lost_him_faded says, I was using Bumble some time ago and paying for premium so I could see who swiped on my profile. There was a guy who made his whole profile about being feminist. It had statements like, I will love it if you have armpit hair, I will love your leg hair, I don't care if you are trans, and his whole profile was about him being a LGBTQ+ accepting feminist. While I appreciate he isn't forcing any gender norms on the people around him, after reading his profile I didn't know what his hobbies were, I didn't know what his job was, I didn't know how we'd spent time together aside from him stroking my leg hair, which I don't have. I would say in general, if people make their whole personality about just one thing and use quite a strong language around it, it's a red flag to me. Shotgun_wedding cake says, when I was in uni, the men who were self-proclaimed feminist men were co-opting that label, and other progressive ones, in order to pursue what they assumed were more sexually open women. Electric Blue Owl says, absolutely agree with the manipulation aspect of it. I've met men who were literally predators, but who promoted themselves, often creatively, as great allies of women. I know of one guy in my city who promotes his punk band as being feminist, but he has a long string of accusations of predation and non-consensual activity. I'd add that for many men, supporting reproductive rights is also in their interest. If women can access contraception and abortion, it makes it easier for guys to have sex with them without using condoms, etc. And there was definitely a narrative present from the 60s onwards that said it was easier to get sex from women if they knew they were protected by the pill. BTW, I support reproductive rights myself, but I can see how some men might support it for selfish reasons. Fabulous now says, it's like a joke I heard on YouTube Shorts/TikTok. A male feminist walked into a bar. Because it's that low. Natville says, some are just activists, and usually they also support the LGBTQ+ community, or are part of it, hi B guys, and climate change, but yeah, others are all like women can do whatever they want, unless they are dating me, then you signed up to be my cook, because I'm helpless in the kitchen. Inaquiveritus says, a lot of men would say anything to get laid, including that they are feminists. Don't fall for it, get to know them, and look at their actions, not their words. That reminds a post on dating a while back where conservative men were full of anger because women would discard them instantly on dating apps. I wonder why that would be. Rivera Head says, like most philosophical stuff, there's often an element of doth protest too much with a lot of those guys. The dudes I know who I'd consider feminist/progressive/whatever, show it so they don't feel the need to tell it, like actually understanding feminist literature vs having just read it, and repeating the points Google will tell you, or learning how to cook food that's respectful of a partner's dietary restrictions vs insisting that he cooks for himself and that's enough. For the ones who mostly donate money and do nothing else/still operate as misogynists, I think there's feeling of buying out from guilt or self-reflection for some. Suspicious_*4535 says, I dated a self-proclaimed feminist man once and one thing, of many, that really bothered me was that he always painted his nails and dyed his beard fun colors, but he didn't want me to cut my hair or express my androgyny. I felt like I needed to be generic Barbie when deep down I knew I was a weird Barbie. The relationship turned out to be very dysfunctional. 10/10 do not recommend. Robot Deluxe says, no, that is all. It's the same way as a black LGBT person. I'm not gonna just fling myself at anyone loudly calling themselves an ally. Actions speak louder than words, and in my experience these people aren't about what they preach lol. Historical_act6595 says, huge red flag. Learnt it the hard way, most of them are trying to bring your ward down and actually are dangerous predators. It's Tuckerclocko says, well I mean, obviously if it's just performative then I wouldn't trust them. I'd presume they're simply employing sound bites as a manipulation tactic to get me to trust them and to use as moral license for future bad behavior. Or to set themselves up as sensitive prior to monopolizing all of my emotional labor while also neglecting me. Because that's basically what they're doing, yes. It's the most shallow attempt at solidarity because it's not solidarity, it's just for their own personal benefit, which isn't what any social movement is about. Now, men who are actually feminists? Yes please. They tend not to self-aggrandize, though, because they realize it's not all about them. Classic Chaotic says, male feminist is a made-up thing. My opinion. I would just call him human rights advocates. Don't date him. T30 says, those ones are looking for easy sex, a nice constant flow of it with kinky sex positive women. It's so easy to spot when you pay attention. Jane_for last says, I found that the louder people proclaim that they are something, feminist, Christian values, moral, drama free, etc., the more likely it is that they are actually the opposite. r/2XChromosomes. Terabithia says, asking for consent is so sexy. So basically last weekend I had my second date with a guy I've matched with on Tinder. We've been texting for a couple of weeks and had met for the first time the weekend before. No physical stuff happened there. My instinct told me that has a really good person I can trust. Turns out I was right. So we were laying on his bed when we kissed for the first time. Things got heated pretty quickly and I stopped to tell him that I'm definitely open for sex, but that I want to build things slowly so I'm not ready to take that step yet. He immediately backed off and told me that's totally fine and that we don't have to do anything and we can just hang out instead. I told him no, I do want sexual stuff to happen, but just not take it too far. He then proceeded to literally ask for consent every single time he did something new. He asked if he can touch my belly, asked if he can take off my shirt, asked if he can play with my boobs, grabbed my ass, and after not even 1 second he took away his hand and apologized for not asking first. One time I hesitated with answering and then went for a yes anyways, but he didn't proceed until I told him to. Frick, I'm touch me feo. Luckily I haven't had any bad experiences when it comes to consent, but damn, I've never felt so respected by a man ever. I genuinely wanted to do all the things we did, and I would've done them anyways, even if he didn't explicitly ask for permission beforehand, but damn, this turned me on so much more. Asking for consent is fricking. A fraud text says, honestly, including vocal, enthusiastic consent makes my partner and I so much more relaxed that intimacy is just that much better. Mycroft Natemba says, normalizing asking for consent might be the biggest contribution of Zoomers to society. When I were younger you would get mocked for communicating verbally. CraftingWeb8582 says, I want this. Zmaspik says, I've been married for almost 14 years, and when my husband asks if he can kiss me, it still gives me a wee flutter of anticipation in my belly. I do not understand why people say asking for consent isn't sexy. It can literally add to the experience. Less_radio_more_head says, I love this SM. I'm happy for you. I wish my BF was more like this. / he just assumes everything is okay if I consented to it last time. Anything but an enthusiastic yes is a no-no. Becorseratus says, it needs to be normalized. I've been told it was a bit of turn off for me simply not taking charge. Just Calm_Edge says, this is so accurate, and it doesn't have to always be asking, it can just be tell me how you want me to do this. Does this feel good? Do you want me to? Is it such a good mix of making sure there's consent, asking for communication about what you like, and also dirty talk? Shotgun_wedding cake says, being able to vocalize and communicate are such good tools in bed and life in general. Not making assumptions around consent and asking directly is such an important, appreciated thing. Very happy for you, Op, that this was a positive experience for you. Quiet Branch 8377 says, oh girl, consent is super sexy always, from everyone involved, and before doing each thing. Even when I ask my guy, can I kiss you on a specific part? That turns him on more. I don't like those physical advances without being explicitly declared or asked consent about. It's such a huge turn off for me. It's literally an ambush for me. I even had exes who would wash me and dress me back up nicely after sex. That's a part of aftercare to me. Ekha says, and required. Watson 350 says, good sex is borderline illegal. OK Calligrapher 9854 says, this is wonderful. Thanks for sharing such a positive experience. Best wishes to you both. Dr. Edit says, thanks for confirming this. I always ask my partner of 5 years for consent. I literally can't get aroused unless I know it's okay to proceed, like there's some mental block, so consent is definitely sexy for me as a man. Zoop says, I thought my boyfriend was so attractive when we went on our first few dates because he never pressured anything. I said on our first date that I was fine to hang out longer, but I didn't want sex yet, and he just shrugged and said that's completely fine, let's watch a movie, and he didn't make a move the whole time. It was so hot that he respected me and my wishes that I ended up having sex with him the very next day. Lol. He jokes that the hottest thing a man can do is respect women, which is 100% true. Flayra for Life says, honestly, it would irritate me and take me out of my headspace. I'm always a little surprised at how many women are into it, and I fully understand that it's the polar opposite of men assuming they can do whatever they want to us, so I really get it, it's just not for me. I'm much more comfortable with using body language, touch, and eye contact to steer sexual experiences. Melrish 221 says, honestly it is. Even the times where I've asked for it and the women had a moment of confusion about it always made things so much better, more enthusiasm and just more energy in general. Almost like knowing you both want the same thing and putting trust in each other then communicating is pretty sexy in itself. It's a shame it's not more common practice. Was always a little worried when a partner has a negative reaction to asking for consent. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.